64K. Where the future is so bright you gotta wear shades.
Thanks for joining, and in this series I'm going to be jumping back and forth between new and old, chronicling the entire Sega Ages series and its spin-offs. If you like Sega and retro, then welcome to Sega Ages, Then and Now. Today we're going to be looking at 1996 Outrun on the Sega Saturn, the 2004 PS2 version, and the 2019 Nintendo Switch release. But before we get going, in case you are a new gamer or have never looked into this series, it's based on the 1986 Sega arcade game that was a powerhouse of a racing game at the time, designed by Sega's golden boy of arcade development, Yu Suzuki. It offered impressive 3D sprite-based graphics based on Sega's System 16 board that was designed specifically for that machine. An absolutely brilliant soundtrack by Hiroshi Kawaguchi, branching paths, and you were racing the clock, not other races, which was uncommon at the time. It was a massive hit and ended up spawning countless conversions to various computers and consoles at the time, like the Sega Master System, the MSX, Commodore 64, and many more. So let's jump to the first then title with one of the first official Sega Ages releases and part of the original launch of this series on the Saturn in 1996. In episode 1 we looked at the English compilation which featured this game, but this is the standalone original Japanese release that has some differences. It's an extremely strong start to the Ages brand, and Outrun was released in 1996 on the Japanese Sega Saturn with a bunch of other popular titles as well. It was immediately praised for its accurate port of the arcade classic. The biggest differences in this version is that it can be made to run at 60 frames per second, making it look super smooth, and therefore a slightly enhanced version of the 86 arcade which ran at 30 frames per second. If you want to unlock this mode, go to the options and highlight game mode and hold A and C and then press left or right, and there you have glorious 60 frames per second racing. Another great aspect of this Saturn version, particularly the Japanese version, is the inclusion of remix music as well, plus the original arcade stuff. And even better is that the original composer Hiroshi Kawaguchi did the remixes himself, and it's an awesome addition to an excellent arcade conversion. If you're a Saturn fan, then importing is probably part of your standard, and picking up this version is an absolute must. And now we'll jump ahead to 2004, where Sega's second wave of the Ages series had begun on the PS2, dubbed the 2500 series, based on its budget 2500 yen price point. Outrun was part of Volume 13's Japanese release, and like the rest of the series, for the most part anyway, this was Outrun remade entirely in 3D for the PS2 system. These remakes in this series are honestly a bit hit and miss, and were aimed directly at introducing a new generation of gamers to classic 80s and early 90s Sega classics. Fortunately, this one works pretty well. Graphically, it's no Outrun coast to coast, but it was a budget title and was never meant to compete with that. One quick play, however, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at the speed and smoothness of the gameplay. It looks quite different, but it's still a level for level remake of the arcade, only now in proper 3D. There's also a nice selection of added options, with Arrange mode offers an entirely new course to race from, gives you the chance to race other drivers, and it also sports a new Arrange soundtrack as well, which has 3 arcade tracks plus 3 remix versions. Overall though, this PS2 version is actually quite good and is totally worth checking out. The graphics are not going to blow you away, but everything else works remarkably well. If you cannot play this region-locked Japanese PS2 version, it is also available on the Sega Classics Collection, English release with a bunch of the other 2500 series PS2 games. And it's time for the Now title and 2019's Nintendo Switch version, which is part of Sega's new version of its classic series. Sega's partner M2 has delivered another flawless version of this game based on the excellent 3DS version they released a few years ago. We're not going to talk about the game mechanics this time, as by this point it's well established, so let's jump to some of the many new options that this version has. First up is a difficulty adjuster, which is great for new players, and anyone for that matter that found this game just a little bit it too hard. There is a multitude of nice filter options from widescreen or boxed, with various arcade borders and CRT options making your preferred look possible. The widescreen is also proper widescreen designed for modern TVs and not some bad stretched version, and looks absolutely fantastic. The Saturn's greatest feature is also present, with its 60 frames per second included for a super smooth look as well. Soundtrack wise, like all the Ages series, we have original arcade tracks but also a ton of remixes in there as well, and new tracks, making it the biggest selection of music available on any classic Outrun release. One of the most unique features, however, is the way the game encourages you to take different paths to finish it by rewarding you with upgrades to your car like extra speed, handling, etc, that can be selected before races. Overall though, you have a dynamite release of the classic Outrun that is by far the best version of this game available to any home gamers to date. And thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. If you can like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.